When I pulled into the driveway that afternoon, I remember thinking how quiet the street felt. Too quiet. Like the air itself was waiting to tell me something. I had just returned from spending 3 days at my sister's house in Glendale. My suitcase was still in the trunk, half filled with folded clothes and the lemon-scented candle I always carried when visiting family. But as I stepped out of the car, I froze. 2 unfamiliar men were hauling my living room furniture, my furniture, through the front door. One was carrying the antique clock Robert had bought me on our 20th anniversary. The other dragged my favorite armchair, its legs scraping against the concrete. At first, I thought they had broken in. I shouted, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" The younger man blinked at me, confused, and said, "Ma'am, the movers were told to clear the property by 5. Property. Not home. Property. I felt my chest tighten. "Where's my daughter? Where's Laura?" I demanded. Before I could take another step, she appeared at the doorway, calm, composed, wearing that navy blazer she always wore when she wanted to look important. "Mom," she said, as if nothing was wrong, "you're home early." "Home early?" My voice cracked. "Why are strangers taking my things?" Her expression didn't even flicker. "Because I finalized the sale. The buyers move in on Monday." The sentence didn't make sense. My ears heard it, but my brain refused to understand. You sold our home?" "Our home?" she repeated softly, like I'd said something childish. "Mom, it's too big for you. You told me yourself last month that you couldn't handle the maintenance anymore." I just stared at her. My fingers started trembling. "I said I was tired, not that I wanted to sell the only home your father and I built." She sighed, the way she used to when I couldn't figure out how to use her fancy smartphone. "You always exaggerate, Mom. It's just a house." Behind her, I saw the movers removing the framed family portrait from the hallway. My late husband's face smiled at me from the photo as it tilted, caught the light, and disappeared through the door. "Just a house," I whispered. Laura tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her voice clipped, efficient, her father's voice when he'd been discussing finances. "Mom, it's already done. The papers are signed. You'll thank me when you're in a nice, manageable apartment without property taxes and headaches." She sounded like a realtor giving a pitch, not a daughter explaining a betrayal. "And where am I supposed to live until this imaginary apartment appears?" "There's a short-term rental complex downtown. It's really nice, and the new owners offered to cover a week of hotel expenses as goodwill." I felt the world tilt. "A week? Mom, please don't make a scene." That was when I realized how practiced she sounded. This wasn't impulsive. It had been arranged, planned even, rehearsed. I saw the confidence in her stance, the faint gleam of relief that I hadn't come home an hour later when the house would have been empty. "Laura, did you even ask me? Did you ask before selling the deed with my name on it?" She smiled tightly. "Technically, after Dad passed, the ownership transferred. We talked about this, remember?" "No," I said, my voice rising. "You talked and I listened because I trusted you." The older mover cleared his throat politely. "Ma'am, we have to keep going. There's a deadline." I stepped aside numbly, letting them pass. I couldn't feel my hands. Everything I'd ever owned was being packed into boxes labeled for someone else's future. "Laura, how could you?" I whispered. Her tone softened, falsely gentle. Mom, I'm trying to help. You can't keep clinging to memories. You're 70 now. Don't you want some peace? Peace. The word landed like a slap. Peace doesn't come from losing everything. It comes from knowing your own child would never do this. She crossed her arms. You're being dramatic, Mom. You'll see. It's for the best. I looked at her then, really looked at her. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't guilty. She was annoyed. My daughter, my only child, was irritated by my pain. A car slowed in front of the driveway. Mrs. Lang from next door leaned out her window. Margaret, what's happening? Laura shot her a brittle smile. Just a little downsizing, Mrs. Lang. Laughter, awkward, fake, echoed across the yard. My humiliation was complete. Inside the house, the rooms echoed hollowly as furniture disappeared. The smell of lemon polish and old memories still clung to the air. I wandered from the living room to the kitchen, watching as the movers stacked boxes labeled kitchenware and books. My hands brushed over the counter where I used to knead dough every Sunday morning. It felt cold now, stripped of belonging. Mom, she said, sharply, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Go pack your essentials. I've already booked you a room at Maplewood Suites for a few nights. I turned slowly to her. So that's it. After 42 years in this house, you just sell it and send me to a hotel? Please don't guilt me. You said you wanted less responsibility. I wanted to scream that responsibility wasn't the same as purpose, that I'd built this home from paint swatches and paychecks, that every nail had a story. But my throat tightened until I couldn't speak. One of the movers asked where to put the fragile box. Laura pointed at the truck without hesitation. My wedding china, my husband's letters, gone. When she noticed my silence, she reached out as if to comfort me. You'll thank me one day. I stepped back. No, Laura. One day, you will understand what you've done. For the first time, a flicker of unease crossed her face, but she turned away before I could read it fully. By evening, the sky had turned violet. The moving truck drove off, its taillights fading down the street. My home looked unfamiliar, walls bare, rooms empty, floors echoing with the ghosts of every conversation we had ever had. Laura handed me an envelope. There's the money from the sale. It should cover your hotel and a deposit for an apartment. I'll transfer the rest once the payment clears.
The envelope was thin, too thin. I don't want your money, I said quietly. I want my home. She sighed again. Mom, please don't be difficult. I looked at her standing there on the porch where I used to wave her off to school every morning, the same porch where her father and I had hung Christmas lights, where we'd watched fireworks every July. Now it was the place where my daughter ended our family history with a signature. A single leaf blew between us, scraping across the wooden boards. Laura, I said softly, there will come a day when you need a place to stand. And when that day comes, I hope you remember what this porch felt like when you took it away from me. Her lips pressed together, a flash of irritation masking something else. Fear, maybe. But she turned without replying. Her car door slammed, the engine roared, and she was gone. The last sunlight spilled through the open doorway, catching the dust in golden streaks. I stood there until darkness crept across the floor, realizing that every room sounded different now, emptier, colder, final. When I finally stepped outside, I locked the door behind me, though it no longer belonged to me. By nightfall, I was homeless in the house I paid for. If you've ever felt betrayed by your own family, Comment justice. The Maplewood Suites had a porch that wasn't really a porch, just a narrow strip of concrete running along the second-floor walkway, bordered by a railing in need of paint. Every evening the air turned the color of weak tea, and the neon vacancy sign blinked its tired rhythm across the parking lot. I learned the rhythm by heart. Sit, breathe, blink, another minute gone. I kept my suitcase tucked under the sagging chair outside my door, as if the weight of my life could anchor me to a place that never intended to keep me. The first night, I called Laura 3 times. The first call rang to voicemail. The second call was silenced mid-ring, the way you end a conversation you never want to start. The third time, I left a message I barely recognized, a tentative, almost apologetic plea. "Just tell me where you put the photo albums," I said, as if the retrieval of memories could fix the loss of home. She didn't answer. By the third day, the motel had its own soundtrack. The soft thud of towels being tossed into laundry carts, the wheeze of a soda machine swallowing small coins and spitting out something sweet and insufficient, the scrape of hangers when the maid brought fresh wire ones. I learned the names of the staff as if that knowledge could make the place kinder to me. Mel at the front desk had a tattoo of a sparrow that escaped the collar of his shirt like a secret. Angela in housekeeping tucked notes into the corner of my pillow. "If you need tea, knock," written in round, cheerful handwriting that made me cry more than once. The crying came in waves at the beginning. I cried because the lamp hummed at an octave that made the room feel lonelier. I cried because the air conditioner turned on and off, like someone breathing in the dark. I cried because the coffee in the lobby was thin and honest about it, because the floral bedspread smelled faintly of lemon and strangers. I cried most when I remembered the weight of the porch key in my pocket all those years, a simple, familiar weight I had never thought to treasure. On the 5th morning, I took the bus to a store to buy a phone charger. In line, a woman wearing nurse scrubs glanced at the hotel key card peeking from my purse and asked, kindly, "Traveling?" The word struck me like a stone dropped into still water. Traveling. That word used to mean suitcases that came home again, mail paused but never precious, a house waiting with its door open. Now it was the place where my daughter ended our family history with a signature. A single leaf blew between us, scraping across the wooden boards. "Laura," I said softly, "there will come a day when you need a place to stand, and when that day comes, I hope you remember what this porch felt like when you took it away from me." Her lips pressed together, a flash of irritation masking something else, fear maybe. But she turned without replying. Her car door slammed, the engine roared, and she was gone. The last sunlight spilled through the open doorway, catching the dust in golden streaks. I stood there until darkness crept across the floor, realizing that every room sounded different now, emptier, colder, final. When I finally stepped outside, I locked the door behind me, though it no longer belonged to me. By nightfall, I was homeless in the house I paid for. If you've ever felt betrayed by your own family, comment justice. The Maplewood Suites had a porch that wasn't really a porch, just a narrow strip of concrete running along the second-floor walkway, bordered by a railing in need of paint. Every evening the air turned the color of weak tea, and the neon vacancy sign blinked its tired rhythm across the parking lot. I learned the rhythm by heart. Sit, breathe, blink, another minute gone. I kept my suitcase tucked under the sagging chair outside my door, as if the weight of my life could anchor me to a place that never intended to keep me. The first night I called Laura 3 times. The first call rang to voicemail. The second call was silenced mid-ring, the way you end the conversation you never want to start. The third time, I left a message I barely recognized, a tentative, almost apologetic plea. "Just tell me where you put the photo albums," I said, as if the retrieval of memories could fix the loss of home. She didn't answer. By the third day, the motel had its own soundtrack. The soft thud of towels being tossed into laundry carts, the wheeze of a soda machine swallowing small coins and spitting out something sweet and insufficient, the scrape of hangers when the maid brought fresh wire ones. I learned the names of the staff as if that knowledge could make the place kinder to me. Mel at the front desk had a tattoo of a sparrow that escaped the collar of his shirt like a secret. Angela in housekeeping tucked notes into the corner of my pillow. "If you need tea, knock," written in round, cheerful handwriting that made me cry more than once. The crying came in waves at the beginning. I cried because the lamp hummed at an octave that made the room feel lonelier. I cried because the air conditioner turned on and off, like someone breathing in the dark. I cried because the coffee in the lobby was thin and honest about it, because the floral bedspread smelled faintly of lemon and strangers. I cried most when I remembered the weight of the porch key in my pocket all those years, a simple, familiar weight I had never thought to treasure. On the 9th day, I saw Mrs. Patel at the grocery store near the bus stop. We recognized each other with the quiet relief of people who shared a street history, neighbors who traded cookies and condolences, and the polite fiction that life was equal on both sides of the property line. She looked at me with careful eyes, the way people do when they suspect you've been hurt and don't know if you'll bleed on their shoes. "Margaret," she said, placing a hand over mine on the cart, "I've been thinking of you."
3 words and I almost cried for the first time in 2 days. "It happened so fast," I said. "I blinked and the house was gone." She pursed her lips. "Too fast. We saw the for sale sign on Friday and the sold sticker on Sunday." Ravi said, "They must have had a cash offer lined up." It didn't feel normal. My mouth went dry. "Lined up?" Mrs. Patel lowered her voice, though we were alone in the aisle between tea and canned soup. "I shouldn't gossip, but my niece works at a title office. She checked the public record out of curiosity. The escrow closed in 5 days. 5? I repeated. Escrow had taken weeks when we bought our home. The word weeks had textures, new keys, new light, new arguments about shelf heights. 5 days sounded like a raid. She also said there were 2 quitclaim deeds involved. Mrs. Patel continued, more hesitant now that she was in deeper than she liked. One recorded last year after Robert passed, and another one recently. Heat crawled up my neck. Quitclaim? It's a way to transfer interest without guarantees, sometimes used in families. But Margaret, this is only what my niece said from public filings. It might be nothing. She squeezed my hand. We were shocked, that's all. I swallowed hard. Did you hear anything else? She glanced at the floor, then back at me. There was talk that Laura and her husband had some investment trouble. A friend of my niece said a hard money lender was involved in something else they did, and those people don't wait. If you're late, they take the roof off your head to make a point. Investment trouble. The phrase pressed against my ribs like a bruise I'd been pretending was just a shadow. I pictured Laura's husband, his confident laugh, his wine-gloss lectures about liquidity events and win-wins. I remembered the way he avoided eye contact when I asked simple questions, the way Laura answered for him, smiling too widely. Mrs. Patel cleared her throat. I probably shouldn't have said anything, but it felt wrong to say nothing at all. It's all right. Wrong is already here. It might as well use words. She nodded, eyes glistening. If you need anything, meals, rides, a place to sit that isn't that motel, my porch is yours, really. My porch is yours. The kindness of it made my stomach twist. I whispered, "Thank you. I might take you up on that." Back at Maplewood, I copied the words onto the motel notepad. Escrow, 5 days. Quitclaim, 2. Hard money lender? The ink bled a little on the cheap paper. I thought of the notary stamp again, how the impression on Laura's documents had looked shallow, lazy. Robert's documents had always worn their legitimacy like a pressed suit, crisp, clear, unambiguous. The ones Laura flashed had been dressed in borrowed clothes. Grief and confusion had been wrestling in my chest all week, but suspicion stood up now and asked for the light to be turned on. I pulled out the thin envelope Laura had pressed into my hand on the porch. Inside were 2 cashier's checks, not even enough to pay for a month's rent in a decent neighborhood, and a printout titled Proceeds Allocation. The numbers were tidy, their decimals aligned like soldiers at parade rest, but the amounts didn't add up to what our home had been worth in any market I recognized. There was a line item I hadn't noticed before. Lion satisfactions, expedited. The figure next to it was monstrous. It devoured what should have been my future and left only crumbs. Lion satisfactions. Whose lions? For what? The house had never carried that kind of debt, not even when Robert's dental practice had a bad quarter and we paid the payroll from our savings rather than cut anyone. If a lion had appeared, I would have been notified. I checked my mailbox once a day, even when I had nothing to hope for but coupons and the pity of catalog companies that still thought I might want a cardigan with tiny cherries embroidered on it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The room pressed inward. Stale air folded me into the mattress like a fitted sheet. I switched on the lamp and dug through the folder of life papers I had brought with me from the house. Birth certificates, the survey of the property line with Robert's careful note about the oak tree's root spread, a photocopy of our original mortgage stamped "paid in full" and red that always made my heart stand taller. There should have been more. A copy of the will, the probate filings, the updated title after Robert died. Somewhere, in a drawer or fire-safe box, I had copies. Had. Past tense. My hand shook so badly the papers fluttered like seizures. What if they weren't missing? What if they were taken? The thought was not an accusation yet, only a shape at the edge of the bed in the dark. But once it moved, it did not go back to sleep. In the morning, I boarded the bus to the county records office. My palms sweated on the metal pole as the city unspooled outside, block after block of small businesses trying to make rent, and people holding their lives together with knots you couldn't see unless you were the one tying them. At the records, the clerk's hair was arranged with a precision that made me trust her. She welcomed me with the tired respect people offer to older women who arrive holding folders like flotation devices. "I'd like copies of any deeds recorded on 874 Brookside," I said, and the numbers tasted like home. She pulled up the parcel immediately, her fingers decisive on the keyboard. "There are several," she said. "Original warranty deed, 1987, mortgage release, 1996, affidavit of death of joint tenant, last year, quitclaim deed recorded last April, and a grant deed recorded 2 weeks ago." "May I see the quitclaim and the grant deed?" She printed them and slid them across the counter. My name appeared on the quitclaim, the letters obedient and familiar. But the signature, my signature, sat wrongly on the line, like a stranger wearing my face. The L in my middle initial swept too high. The flourish on the G wasn't mine. It looped as if someone had practiced loops more than letters. The notary stamp was black, not blue. The seal was shallow. The date hovered 3 days after a morning. I distinctly remember planting zinnias along the back fence and eating leftover stew standing up because Laura had arrived with a crisis about a presentation, and I listened until the stew had cooled into a memory. On that date, I had never left the yard. "Is there a notary ID on this?" I asked. The clerk tapped the number in and frowned. "This notary's commission was suspended last year for improper verification." She met my eyes. "Do you want to file an inquiry?" The room steadied. For days I had been moving in gelatin, thoughts wobbling and settling out of shape. Now the air sharpened. "Yes," I said, "please." I asked for a copy of the grant deed as well, the one that had transferred the property to a limited liability company with a name that sounded like an apology. The buyer's address led to a mailbox service. The escrow company's name was unfamiliar, and when I scribbled it down, the letters came out hard, denting the paper below the paper I was writing on. "Is there an attorney you're working with?" the clerk asked, gentle the way people are when they see the first thin thread of a noose, "and hope you'll cut it." "Not yet," I said, "but there will be." On the bus back, the city looked the same, but the edges of everything were brighter, outlined in an ink my eyes had finally learned to see. As we rolled past Brookside, I didn't look down the street. I didn't want to see strangers' cars, a new doormat, a wreath bought in a store that sold seasons in aisle 12. Instead, I pressed the documents against my chest under my coat and let the heat of my body try to soften the paper's chill.
Back at Maplewood, I sat on the not-quite porch and watched the sky color itself into evening. Across the lot, a couple argued softly in Spanish about something ordinary and urgent, money or marriage or dinner. I wanted to stand and tell them to keep arguing, to keep their messiness inside a space they owned together, to make the porch theirs for as long as the wood held. Instead, I hunched into my sweater and counted the breaths between cars turning in. I thought about Laura's face the day she said, "Don't make a scene." I thought about the envelope of money that insulted math and memory. I thought about the notary with a suspended commission and my own name bent into a shape that fit someone else's plan. Grief still lived in me. It would for a while. It slept under my ribs and woke when it wanted, pawing at my heart. But confusion was packing its things, and suspicion had moved into the room next door with a determination that made me sit up straighter. I dialed Laura again, not because I expected an answer, but because I needed to hear the sound of my will in the act of trying. Voicemail. I left a message with no tremor in it this time. "Laura, I've seen the deeds. Call me." I didn't wait. I opened the motel folder and wrote a name on the top page, Mr. Graves, our old family lawyer, the man whose handwriting on Christmas cards never changed and whose advice had always been simple and dull, which is how you want the law to be when it belongs to you. I wrote another name beside it, one I didn't know yet but could already feel the shape of, who notarized the quitclaim. Then I wrote a sentence that surprised me with its steadiness. I will not be erased from my own life. The Maplewood porch lights flickered on in a line, the world making small, tired promises to the people who had paid for a night's shelter. I tucked the documents back into the folder and slid the pen into the spiral of the notebook as if arming it. A moth hurled itself at the light above my door, unafraid of the heat, determined only to touch what it wanted. 2 weeks had taught me the furniture of loneliness and the ways it rearranged a room. It had taught me the alphabet of shame, how you spell it with looks from neighbors in the silence of a daughter. But it had also taught me the weight of paper, the story ink tells when you stop pretending it's just a color. It had taught me to sit still long enough for suspicion to grow legs. I went inside and set the alarm on my phone, the screen lighting my face with the pale glow of decisions. Tomorrow, I would knock on Mr. Graves' door with documents in hand and the part of me that still believed in the kind of order that could be written down and stamped in blue. I turned off the lamp and lay in the hum of Maplewood's air, listening to the machine breathe for both of us. Outside, the neon sign kept blinking its gentle command, vacancy, vacancy, and for the first time since Laura closed my door, the word didn't sound like a sentence. It sounded like a space I might cross to get back to myself. The morning I decided to visit Mr. Graves, the air smelled like rain, though the forecast had promised sun. I took it as a warning. Storms never ask for permission, they just arrive. I stood outside the bus terminal with my folder clutched against my chest like a life vest, my fingers cold despite the mild spring. Inside that folder were the copies I'd printed from the county recorder's office, the forged quitclaim deed, the grant deed to a shell company, and a list of questions that had kept me awake for 2 nights. Mr. Graves' office was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building downtown, the kind of place where the elevator groaned like an old man clearing his throat before telling the truth. The brass plaque beside the door still read, Graves and Sullivan, attorneys at law. Robert's name had been there for years, though he'd left the partnership when he opened his dental practice. Mr. Graves had never removed it. That sentimentality is why I trusted him. He looked up when I entered, his reading glasses halfway down his nose, a pen tucked behind one ear. Margaret, he said warmly, standing with the careful respect of a man raised in another century. You look, well, all things considered. All things considered, I repeated, forcing a smile. He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. Sit down. Tell me what's happened. I sat, the folder heavy in my lap. It's about the house, Richard. I still used his first name in private, though it sounded too soft now, too trusting. Laura sold it. He blinked, confused. She sold it? With your consent? That's the thing, I said, sliding the documents across his desk. Apparently, yes, if you believe my signature. He put on his glasses, adjusted the lamp, and began to read. The silence stretched until I could hear the faint hum of the ceiling fan above us. He tapped the date. This is recent, he murmured. And that's not your hand. I'd swear to it. He held the page closer, frowning. Did you authorize any title transfer after Robert passed? I never even knew what a quitclaim was until last week. He exhaled slowly. Then whoever did this forged your signature and used a notary who shouldn't have been working. That's felony-level fraud, Margaret. I stared at him. You're saying my own daughter? He interrupted gently. I'm saying someone used your name illegally. We'll let the facts decide who that someone is. His hands moved efficiently, sorting the pages, making notes, with a black pen that scratched softly against the paper. He turned to his computer, typed rapidly, and brought up the public record database. The buyer entity is Westbridge Capital Holdings, LLC. It's new, filed 3 months ago. Registered agent, Kevin Davis. Kevin, I said quietly. My daughter's husband. He turned to me, expression darkening. That's your son-in-law, isn't it? I nodded, the words sticking in my throat. Mr. Graves removed his glasses, folded them, and set them on the desk with the care of a man placing flowers on a grave. Then it's worse than I thought, he said. This isn't a mistake. It's collusion. My heart pounded. What do I do? He paused, then reached for a dusty binder on the shelf behind him. Robert and I drafted an updated property agreement before his passing. I insisted he include a protection clause, just in case the estate ever got complicated. He flipped through the pages until he found what he was looking for. Here, listen carefully. His voice slowed, deliberate. In the event of a property transfer procured through coercion, misrepresentation, or fraudulent means, said transaction shall be rendered void upon verified discovery within 30 calendar days of the recording date. The words hit me like air after drowning. 30 days? He nodded. If we can prove the signature was forged and file the claim before that deadline, the sale is nullified. The house, the proceeds, everything returns to the rightful owner. And if we miss it? His expression softened. Then the fraud becomes nearly impossible to undo. The new title holder could claim good faith purchase, and you'd be forced into civil litigation that might take years. I pressed a hand against my chest. My heart beat slow and heavy, as if trying to count the seconds. How long has it been? He checked the record date. 14 days as of today. I swallowed hard. Then we have 16 hours left. He looked at me, measuring resolve. It's going to be close, Margaret, but not impossible. Something inside me straightened. Tell me what to do. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that recognized steel beneath wrinkles. First, we get the notary's affidavit proving their commission was suspended. That alone establishes fraud. Second, we trace the wire transfers from escrow. If the money went to Laura's personal account, that's irrefutable evidence. Can we get those records in time? He hesitated. Ordinarily, no, but I still have contacts at the bank's legal department. If I call in a favor, maybe. I sat forward, my voice firmer than I expected. Then call them. He nodded, already dialing. As he spoke to someone on the other end, his tone shifted from polite to commanding. Yes, this is Richard Graves, attorney of record for the Sullivan estate. I'm invoking Section 314 access for suspected fraud. Yes, immediately. He hung up after a tense minute. They'll fax us the transfer summary within the hour. The office fell silent again. I watched the clock on the wall tick toward 11. Time had weight now. Every second sounded like a nail. Mr. Graves leaned back in his chair. Margaret, forgive me for asking, but are you certain you're ready for what comes next? This isn't just about reclaiming your house. It's about confronting your daughter in a court of law. I looked down at my hands, pale against the folder's dark edge. Ready or not, she made this war. I'm just deciding not to lose it. He nodded approvingly. Spoken like your husband. That name still carried warmth and ache. Robert would have seen through her sooner, I said quietly. He always could read people. He trusted you to handle this. That's why he wrote that clause. He told me once, Margaret's got more sense than I ever will. She just hides it behind kindness. My throat tightened. I hadn't known that. The fax machine in the corner whirred to life. Mr. Graves rose, retrieved the curling sheets, and scanned them quickly. Then he exhaled. There it is. The escrow transfer directly to an account under Laura Davis. No mention of the LLC after closing. The funds bypassed standard holding. So she stole it, I said flatly. Yes, cleanly but undeniably. For a moment, silence filled the room again, thick as fog. I stared at the numbers printed on the paper, each zero a betrayal, each decimal a lie. Then slowly, something colder than grief began to form inside me, something precise, deliberate, unyielding. Richard, I said quietly, can we still void the sale before midnight? He studied me. If we can get the affidavit and file before the recorder's office closes, yes, but we'll have to move fast. Then let's move. He smiled faintly. That's the Margaret I remember. As he gathered his files, I glanced around the office. The photographs on the wall were the same as they had been for decades. Robert and Richard shaking hands at a ribbon cutting, their wives smiling nearby. For a moment, the memory felt cruel, like looking at ghosts who still believed the world was fair. Do you ever wonder, I said softly, how people become strangers to their own blood? Richard paused, coat in hand. Every day, I said softly, but I've also learned that blood doesn't define family, loyalty does. We walked down the hall together, the echo of our footsteps sharp on the marble floor. Outside, the rain that had threatened all morning finally began to fall, thin but persistent. I stood under the awning while Mr. Graves locked his briefcase. The drops hit the pavement with the precision of a clock counting down. Go back to the motel, he said. I'll call once I've secured the affidavit. Keep your phone close. We'll file electronically tonight if we have to. I nodded, gripping the folder tighter. Thank you, Richard. He gave me a sad smile. Don't thank me yet. Wait until we win. The bus stop was crowded, but the world had gone strangely quiet in my head. As I rode back to Maplewood, the city blurred into streaks of gray. I thought of Laura at her office, maybe sipping coffee, unaware that her lies were unraveling by the minute. I wondered if she ever hesitated before signing my name, if she'd felt even a flicker of guilt, or if she'd smiled while the pen moved, knowing that the ink would bury me. By the time I reached my motel room, dusk had settled.
I sat by the window watching the rain draw crooked lines on the glass. My phone buzzed at 8:47 p.m. It was Mr. Graves. His voice came through, steady but urgent. "We've got the affidavit. It's confirmed. The notary was suspended and her seal was used without authorization. That's the final piece, Margaret. We can file now." Relief hit me in waves. "Can we still void the sale before midnight?" He hesitated, then answered, "The recorder's office timestamps electronically at midnight. You'll need to sign the complaint in person before 11:45 so it registers same day. I'll meet you at my office in an hour." I checked the clock. 10:08. The world narrowed to one truth. Every minute mattered. As I grabbed my coat, the folder, and the keys to a life that no longer existed, I felt the storm outside gathering strength. It matched the one inside me. 14 days had passed. I had exactly 16 hours to prove my daughter's crime. Mr. Graves was waiting under the awning when I reached his office again, coat dark with rain, briefcase clamped like a lifeline. Beside him stood a young woman with a neat braid, a legal pad hugged to her chest, and the alert, unblinking attention of someone who takes nothing for granted. "Margaret, this is Evelyn. Top of her class, ruthless with a scanner, patient with bureaucracy."
Evelyn's hand was warm and firm. "Mrs. Sullivan, I'm here to help you get everything we need before the clock runs out." The words steadied me more than the coffee Mr. Graves pressed into my hands. We took the elevator up, 3 floors of humming cables and old echoes. Inside the conference room, Evelyn spread a portable scanner, a laptop, sticky notes color-coded in quiet confidence. She labeled piles with surgical efficiency. Recorder copies, affidavit, notary, escrow transfer, proceeds allocation. Her pen scratched as if the ink itself wanted to be useful. "Here's how we move," she said. "Banks first. We need the escrow disbursement ledger and proof of where the wires landed. Then the title office, chain of custody for the grant deed. Then the notary location, CCTV, visitor logs, any appointment book. Somewhere in this chain, someone looks the other way or pretends not to see. We make them look." Something inside me eased into a place I hadn't visited in weeks. Purpose. "Tell me where to stand," I said. "I'll hold the door." We started with the bank that handled escrow. Mr. Graves called ahead, then again from the car, then a third time as we crossed the marble lobby that smelled faintly of lemon and posture. A receptionist with a smile like a paper cut asked us to wait. We sat under a painting of a meadow while the clock chewed minutes. When the assistant branch manager finally arrived, she had the careful eyes of someone trained to cushion bad news. "We're happy to help if we can, but escrow details are discoverable in a fraud investigation," Evelyn supplied pleasantly. "We're not asking to open the vault. We're asking you to show us which door it leads to." The woman hesitated at the intern's calm and at Mr. Graves' card. An old name still carried weight. She led us into a small office with glass walls that were more performance than privacy. Evelyn positioned the scanner on the edge of the desk like a scalpel. "We need the disbursement ledger from closing," Mr. Graves said, "and any amendments executed within 24 hours. The manager typed, frowned, typed again. There was an expedited wire, unusual for a residential property. The funds left escrow the same day. "To whom?" Evelyn asked. The woman glanced at me with pity softened by policy. "A personal account. Laura Davis." The syllables did knock me down this time. I counted them, like steps on a staircase I already knew how to descend without falling. "Print it," I said. She did, then slid the paper toward us like a confession. Evelyn's scanner sang its thin, industrious song. We watched the machine breathe proof into the laptop. "Was there an intermediary? Any hold accounts?" The manager shook her head.
Escrow received funds from Westbridge Capital Holdings, confirmed title clearance, then dispersed per closing instructions. Closing instructions signed by whom? Evelyn asked. Seller. Name? The woman swallowed. Margaret Sullivan. She pronounced my name carefully, as if it might break. I stared at the paper and saw the crooked version of myself inked into permission I never gave. Who authorized the expedited disbursement? Mr. Graves pressed. The manager clicked on a note field. Special instruction, urgent personal matter requires immediate release. Signatures verified on site. There's a clerk ID here. Print it, Evelyn said, already writing down the code. The assistant branch manager's eyes softened further. I'm sorry this is happening, she said, a whisper. Don't be, I replied, surprised at the calm in my voice. This is where it stops. We left with the folder that felt heavier than paper. In the car, rain stitched the windshield into a moving veil. Evelyn flipped through the scans on her laptop, cross-referencing account numbers, dates, the precise minute the wire leapt from escrow to Laura's account. 2:41 p.m., she said. You were at the recorder at 4. Whoever scripted this was confident you wouldn't look until later. Whoever scripted this, I repeated, and felt a new hinge in the sentence. Our next stop was the title office listed on the grant deed, a glass suite with art that looked expensive on purpose. We were ushered into a room with a carafe of cucumber water and a woman whose job it was to say no without using the word. Chain of custody for the deed, document delivery logs, the runner who carried the envelope, camera footage from the lobby last month, the day of recording. I'm not sure we can. You can, Evelyn said, the braid at her nape as steady as the line of her mouth. And we're on a 30-day void clause. If we file, you'll be subpoenaed anyway. Help us now, and the filing mentions your cooperation. The woman glanced at me the way people glance at fires, afraid to feed them, afraid to leave them. Then she stood. Give me 15 minutes. We sipped water that tasted like good habits. The footage came on a small screen. The lobby camera, the receptionist's desk, the revolving door. Evelyn scrubbed to the timestamp we needed and froze the frame. Laura entered at 11:02, hair smooth, jacket dark, mouth set in that durable smile she wore like a professional credential. She slid a folder across the counter. The receptionist checked ID, nodded, stamped. Then Kevin appeared. He did not go to the counter. He hung back, cell phone at his ear, eyes on Laura's hands. When she stepped away, he stepped forward, said something quick to the receptionist, leaned in with the easy, masculine charm he used like a universal key. The receptionist looked flattered, then uncertain, then stamped another page. What did he add? I asked. The title officer pulled up the log. A closing instruction, special handling. Evelyn's pen paused above the paper. What did that mean here? She swallowed. It meant we release the deed for recording with the writer, flagging the disbursement as time-sensitive. It meant no hold. Mr. Graves' jaw tightened. Do you keep signature cards? For notary comparison? Yes. Get me the one on file for Mrs. Sullivan. And his voice cut politely through policy like a blade through cake. The signature card came on thick paper. My real signature sat stay and sure, the G a careful hook, the S begun with a pressure point that bled just a little extra ink. On the deed copy, the S was wrong, a confident imitation, but an imitation nonetheless, the loop swoopier, the ending flourish too pleased with itself. Evelyn lined them up, then looked at me. Do you want to keep looking, or do you want to say it out loud now? I took a breath that tasted like rain and decades. Say it. It's forged. Cleanly, but not expertly. Whoever signed is good at copying, not at patience. The title officer stood with her arms folded tight. "If this becomes a complaint, we'll cooperate." "When," I corrected gently, "when it becomes a complaint."
Outside, the storm had matured into a steady, deliberative fall. We walked the block in silence until the wind turned Evelyn's braid into a darker line against her coat. At the corner, she stopped. "Mrs. Sullivan, we have bank proof and chain of custody irregularities. We need the notary now." The notary office listed on the quitclaim deed was less an office than a strip mall suite between a payday lender and a nail salon. The sign read Premier Document Services in cheerful letters that tried too hard. The waiting area smelled of toner and aspiration. A young man with a ring through his eyebrow looked up from behind the counter. "Can I help you?" Evelyn slid a copy of the deed across the counter and kept her tone conversational. "We need the appointment log and CCTV for this date." He frowned. "We don't usually—" "Your notary's commission was suspended," she said, gentle but precise. "Either someone used her seal illegally here or someone used your name to launder fraud. Do you want to be the office that helps fix this or the one that needs a search warrant?" The ringed eyebrow rose. He disappeared into a back room, reemerged with a ledger and a thumb drive. "I'm not saying you got this from me," he muttered, "but this is what we have." The log told a small story. A booking at 10:30 under Sullivan, a phone number that wasn't mine, the ID verified column initialed, but the initials didn't match the notary seal. The CCTV footage showed a woman signing on the corner desk, head bent, hair tucked under a beanie. The angle never gave a face, but when she pushed the pen away, a man's hand with a distinct scar across the knuckles slid the paper closer, then pointed at the signature line with the casual authority of someone who considered the world a form to be filled. "Freeze," Evelyn said. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "That scar." I closed my eyes and saw a Thanksgiving years ago when Kevin tried to carve a turkey with a pocket knife and slipped, blood on the white tablecloth like a signature. "Kevin," I whispered. We left with the thumb drive, a photocopied log, and a receipt form the clerk insisted we sign so he could explain to his boss why the footage had vanished. In the car, Evelyn's laptop accepted the drive as if it had been waiting for this exact shape all along. She marked the frames, tagged the time codes, saved everything twice. "Next," she said, "we chased the witnesses." "The witnesses? Your quitclaim has 2. That's unusual for a simple notarization here. Some notaries ask for them when they're nervous or when they're paid to be." The addresses printed next to the witness signatures led us to a mailbox store and an apartment where the occupant had moved 3 months prior. The property manager, a man whose keys chattered like teeth with every step, checked the file. "Tenant was here short-term, paid cash, barely spoke, left no forwarding." "Name?" He shrugged. "C. Reed." Evelyn showed him a screenshot from the notary's CCTV, a glimpse of a shoulder, a watch face bright as a coin. He squinted. "Could be. That everyone? I've got a leak in 2B. Everyone wasn't there, but enough of them were. A fake address, a witness who existed only long enough to be paid in cash, a notary office with a suspended commission, a title office charmed into speed, an escrow manager told to move, move, move. Back at Mr. Graves' office, the conference table became a crime scene where the murderer's method was politeness and signatures. Evelyn built a timeline on the whiteboard. 10:30 a.m., notary, unknown female plus Kevin. 11:02, title lobby, Laura. 11:07, Kevin adds special handling. 2:41 p.m., wire to Laura's account. 4 p.m., deed recorded. Mr. Graves tapped the board with the end of his glasses. "We can file on this." "I will," I said. Evelyn glanced at me, her voice softer. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why are you still this calm? Most people would be breaking." I looked at the paper ocean spread before us. "Because I already broke. Now I'm building." She nodded once, as if allowing herself to believe something nicer about the world for a moment. "Good answer. We worked through dinner without noticing we were hungry. Evelyn ordered sandwiches and ate hers standing up, eyes never leaving the screen. I read through the bank notations until the numbers turned back into the language I learned running a household, a practice, a life. Somewhere around 10, Mr. Graves' phone buzzed. He listened, face flattening into focus, then covered the receiver. That was a colleague at the U.S. Attorney's Office. There's chatter about Kevin Davis. An internal audit at his firm flagged anomalies. The word on the marble is embezzlement. The syllables were heavy as iron and cold as the space under a door. Embezzlement? I repeated. Evelyn's pen stopped moving. How recent? Recent enough that he'd need fast cash to plug the hole before quarter end. Mr. Graves' mouth tightened. Selling your house wasn't just greed, it was triage. I felt something settle in me. Not relief, not wrath, clarity. So he pushed Laura. He promised her they'd fix it later if they could survive now. Evelyn met my eyes. He turned your home into a bandage for a wound he made. And she let him? I said. She held the cloth while he pressed? Nobody spoke for a half minute. The air conditioner kicked on, a white noise that felt like the world trying to apologize for its machinery. I'm not after money, I said, my voice low. I'm after truth. Evelyn didn't smile, but something softened around her eyes. Then we're right where we need to be. We compiled affidavits, the bank manager confirming the wire, the title officer acknowledging special handling, the notary clerk admitting the footage in the suspended commission, the property manager with the empty apartment, the mailbox store with the witness who had no face. We stitched them into one document that read like a clock with hands on every page. I signed where my name belonged this time. My pen left the pressure point it always did. Near midnight, we walked the filing down the hall to the e-record portal room, an under-furnished space with an over-serious scanner and a blinking modem older than some marriages. Evelyn hovered as the progress bar crept forward, line by stubborn line. The system stamped our complaint with the county time. Mr. Graves checked it twice, then printed the confirmation. Filed, stamped and breathing. I let out a breath I had been holding for 14 days. The room seemed wider. The storm had finally tired itself out. The windows hummed with the fragile quiet after weather remembers it can't last forever. Now what? I asked. Now we serve notice, Mr. Graves replied. First thing in the morning. The buyer LLC, the title company, the bank, your daughter, and Kevin Davis. The restraining order should freeze any secondary transfers until the void claim is heard. And we wait. To a hearing date, he said. But we've stopped the bleeding. Evelyn zipped her bag closed and looked at me as though memorizing the face of a particular kind of courage. Mrs. Sullivan, you should sleep. You'll need your voice tomorrow. I'll try, I said. In the doorway, Mr. Graves touched my shoulder, fatherly, careful. You did more than try. You turned the lights on. Back at Maplewood, the neon vacancy sign blinked, but it didn't look like a sentence anymore. I set the folder on the table, sat on the bed, and let the quiet climb onto the mattress beside me like an animal that had finally learned I wasn't its enemy. My phone vibrated on the nightstand, an email from Evelyn. Subject line, we have them. Inside were the attachments, ledger, footage, logs, affidavits, all zipped into a single file named truth.zip. The name made me laugh, a small surprise sound that felt like finding a penny face up. I lay back and stared at the ceiling. In the plaster, I could suddenly see the outline of our old porch, its grain, its nail heads, the way the afternoon sun used to cut a diagonal across the boards at 3:30 in summer. I could see the door Laura had shut and the way my hand had shaken when I locked it from the wrong side. It still hurt, and it would for a while. But the hurt had a job now. It could point. Before I turned out the lamp, I opened my notes and wrote the only sentence I wanted to remember in the morning. I am not fragile. I am precise. Then I slept, and for the first time in 2 weeks, the air conditioner sounded like a lullaby instead of a warning. Comment truth if you'd fight back no matter the odds. The courthouse smelled faintly of rain-soaked marble and nervous perfume.
the kind of scent that clings to justice before it's decided which side it will land on. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Mr. Graves and Evelyn, my palms flat against the grain of the wood. Across the aisle, Laura and Kevin sat shoulder to shoulder, whispering to their attorney like children caught rehearsing excuses instead of apologies. Laura looked beautiful, of course. She'd always known how to wear dignity like armor, a cream suit, gold earrings, hair swept back in practiced composure. When our eyes met, she looked through me, not at me, the way you look at someone you used to love but can no longer afford to remember. The judge entered, robe swaying, gavel striking once, not loud, but final. Case 14-932, Sullivan versus Westbridge Holdings, the clerk announced. Mr. Graves rose. Your Honor, this is a petition to void a fraudulent property sale under the 30-day discovery clause of the Sullivan Trust. The defense attorney, a tall man with a voice trained to sound certain, countered immediately. Your Honor, my client acted in good faith, believing she held legal authority to execute the sale. There was no intent to defraud. The judge's gaze moved between us. We'll let the evidence decide intent. Evelyn opened the first binder. The sound of paper against paper echoed through the room like the steady rhythm of footsteps leading somewhere inevitable. Mr. Graves began carefully, each word measured, polite, but edged with quiet fire. Mrs. Sullivan's signature on the quitclaim deed is falsified. We have handwriting analysis confirming forgery, along with a notarization executed by a suspended notary. He gestured toward the exhibit table. Evelyn placed 2 enlarged copies side by side on the easel, my real signature and the forgery. From the back row, someone gasped. Even the judge leaned forward. The difference was subtle, almost elegant in its deceit. The forger had confidence, but no patience. Mrs. Sullivan, would you please confirm which signature is yours? I stood, my voice steady. This one, I said, touching the left page. That's my hand. The other belongs to someone who thought love made me blind. Laura's jaw tightened. Her attorney rose. Objection, Your Honor. Emotional speculation. The judge waved him down gently. The witness is identifying her own signature. Overruled. Mr. Graves continued. We also have the bank disbursement record. He handed the clerk a document, and the clerk passed it to the judge. The escrow funds were wired not to the holding company, but directly to an account under the name Laura Davis. The timestamp coincides with the falsified closing instructions. Evelyn queued up a slide showing the bank's ledger and the time of the transfer, 2:41 p.m., glowing bright on the courtroom screen. Mrs. Davis, the judge said, eyes narrowing, did you receive these funds? Laura's voice came cool and even. I managed the transaction, yes, but it was temporary. We were reinvesting. Reinvesting into what? Your husband's brokerage account, currently under federal investigation for embezzlement. The courtroom murmured, the kind of collective sound that feels like the air inhaling. Kevin's face drained of color. His attorney half stood, then sat again, deciding silence might lose slower. I object, he muttered weakly. Overruled, said the judge, eyes flicking toward Kevin. Answer the question. Kevin shifted in his seat, hands clasped tightly. The funds were meant to cover a short-term liquidity issue, a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Graves repeated. You forged your mother-in-law's signature, used a suspended notary, fabricated witnesses, and wired $2.8 million to your wife's personal account, and you call that a misunderstanding? The judge's brow furrowed. The silence after that question was thick enough to hold. Laura's voice broke the quiet, small but defiant. We were going to fix it before she even noticed. It wasn't supposed to go this far. The words cracked through me like dry wood snapping in a fire. I wanted to stand and ask her when theft became care, when deceit became devotion. But I didn't. The judge was already speaking. Mrs. Davis, she said, her tone slow, deliberate. Intent is measured not by apologies after the fact, but by the choices before it. Evelyn rose next, handing over a thumb drive. Exhibit F, CCTV footage from the notary office showing Mr. Kevin Davis facilitating the illegal notarization. The notary clerk's statement confirms the seal belonged to a suspended notary whose commission expired prior to this recording. The judge nodded. "Play it." The screen flickered to life. The grainy footage filled the room. A woman in a beanie signing papers, a man's hand pointing to the line. Then the camera caught the scar, small but unmistakable, a diagonal slash across the knuckles, the same scar Kevin wore like an afterthought. Gasps again. One juror leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Mr. Davis," the judge said evenly, "is that you?" He hesitated. "It's not clear." Evelyn zoomed in on the frame. The scar glowed pale under fluorescent light. "It's clear enough," she said quietly. Kevin's lawyer whispered something urgent, but Kevin pushed his chair back. "Fine," he snapped. "Yes, I was there, but she wanted it done. Laura said her mother was too emotional, that it would take months to get her to agree. We were protecting her from herself." The sentence landed in the room like a confession wearing a disguise. The judge stared at him. Protecting her. By committing felony fraud. Kevin tried to speak again, but the courtroom door opened as two federal officers stepped inside. Their badges caught the overhead light like punctuation. The judge sighed softly, almost sadly. "It appears your timing is unfortunate, Mr. Davis. The U.S. Attorney's Office has just filed its own warrant." Kevin froze. Laura's hand reached for him instinctively, but he pulled away as the officers approached. The handcuffs clicked, the sound final and strangely quiet. Laura stood, trembling. "Please," she said to the judge, "he made mistakes, but I didn't know it was this bad." Mr. Graves spoke gently, almost kindly. "Then you'll have a chance to tell the truth, Mrs. Davis. The court values honesty, even when it comes late." Laura turned toward me then, eyes wide, tears trembling, but not yet falling. "Mom, I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I was helping him. I thought—" I met her gaze. "You thought wrong." The judge tapped her gavel once. "Order. The court will rule." The room stilled. The only sound was the clock above the bench marking each second as if counting down to redemption or ruin. Based on the evidence, this court finds clear and convincing proof of fraud in the conveyance of the property located at 847 Brookside Avenue. Under the terms of the Sullivan Trust, the sale is hereby declared null and void. Title reverts to Mrs. Margaret Sullivan, effective immediately. She looked at me, her voice softening. "Mrs. Sullivan, your husband was wise to include such foresight. The court commends your composure and pursuit of justice." My throat tightened. I wanted to thank her, but the words stayed behind my ribs. "Additionally," the judge continued, "all funds associated with the sale will be frozen pending restitution hearings. Mrs. Davis, you will cooperate with investigators and provide a full accounting."
Laura nodded numbly. The fight had left her eyes. What remained was something I hadn't seen in years. The little girl who used to come running into my arms after scraping her knee. The one who used to whisper, "Don't be mad, Mommy. It was an accident." For a heartbeat, I almost reached for her. But justice isn't mercy's enemy. It's just the place where mercy learns boundaries. When the gavel struck for the last time, the sound felt like air finally returning to my lungs. Outside, the sky was clearing. Sunlight slipped between retreating clouds, catching on the courthouse steps like it had been waiting for me. Reporters murmured near the sidewalk, but I didn't stop. I walked down those steps slower than I had walked up, each one feeling earned, each one mine again. Evelyn caught up beside me, her braid damp from the rain. "It's over," she said quietly. "Not over," I replied, looking toward the street where Laura's figure disappeared into a police car's reflection. "Just balanced." Mr. Graves smiled faintly. "Robert would be proud." The name hit me softly this time, like sunlight on skin. "He'd tell me to get new locks," I said, and even managed a small laugh. We drove back to Brookside in silence. The neighborhood looked the same, though everything inside me had changed.
The for sale sign was gone, the new owners never moved in, and the garden, my garden, still waited, wild and patient, as if it had believed I'd come back. When I unlocked the door, the house sighed. That's the only way to describe it. A soft, settling sound, like walls recognizing the hands that built them. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish, dust, and memory. I walked through each room slowly, fingertips brushing the furniture that had been recovered from storage, each item a recovered word in a language I thought I'd forgotten. In the living room, sunlight poured across the floorboards where Robert's old chair used to stand. I stood in that light until it wrapped me like forgiveness. For the first time in months, I exhaled inside my own home. There were no cheers, no triumph, no vengeance dressed as victory, just stillness. Justice, when it finally arrives, doesn't shout. It whispers, "You can rest now." I sat on the porch that evening, the same porch where my daughter had once told me to leave, the same boards that had held my humiliation, now holding peace instead. The cicadas hummed their endless song, and the world spun on, indifferent and merciful. I didn't know yet what desperation really looked like, but I was about to. It was raining again that night, the same kind of soft, relentless rain that doesn't rage but seeps into everything, quiet and patient. I'd been reading on the porch, the light from the lamp spilling across the wet boards, when the sound came. 3 knocks, uneven, uncertain. For a second, I thought it was the wind, but then I heard it again. I rose slowly, heart heavy with an instinct I didn't want to name. The house was silent except for the ticking clock in the hall. When I opened the door, lightning flashed somewhere far off, illuminating a figure on the porch. Laura. She stood there, soaked through, her hair clinging to her face, mascara streaking down like bruised tears. Her hands trembled as she hugged herself, and the light caught the glint of a bracelet I'd given her for her college graduation, the one I thought she'd pawned long ago. "Mom," her voice cracked on the word. "Please, I didn't know where else to go." For a moment, I couldn't move. The scene was too perfect, too cruel in its symmetry. The same porch, the same rain, but the roles reversed. 2 weeks ago, she was the one holding the power, the one with dry clothes and sharp words. Now she looked like a child who'd wandered too far into the dark. I leaned against the doorframe. "You shouldn't be here." "I have nowhere else." She wiped her face with a shaking hand. "Kevin's gone. He disappeared after the arraignment, Mom. He emptied our accounts, everything. I don't even have gas money. I haven't eaten since yesterday." Her words came out in pieces, jagged, desperate, collapsing into one another. I said nothing. The rain filled the silence for me. "Please," she whispered, "just let me stay for tonight." I looked at her, really looked. The heels she wore were ruined, her stockings torn. The cream suit from the courtroom hung loose, water-darkened and wrinkled. The woman who once said she'd never be helpless now stood begging at the same door she'd slammed shut behind me. "Do you remember this porch?" I asked quietly. "What?" "This porch," I said. "Do you remember what you said to me the last time we stood here?" She looked down. "Mom, please." "I told you not to make a scene. I told you to go find somewhere else to die. And now here you are, at my door, asking to live." She flinched like I'd struck her. "I was wrong," she said quickly. "I know that now. I was stupid and scared, and I thought I was helping Kevin. I thought—" "You thought loyalty meant blindness." Her tears came harder. "Please, Mom, I've lost everything. I just need one night, just one." I stepped back, letting her see the house behind me. The faint light in the hall, the framed photographs she'd once boxed up, now hanging again where they belonged. Everything she sold,
everything she traded, all of it breathing again under my roof. You sold my home for comfort, and now you've come to its doorstep for survival. Her breath hitched. I know, she whispered, and I'd undo it all if I could. I swear I would. Would you? Yes, she cried. I would, Mom. I'd give anything just to come inside, just to sit where it's warm. The rain had soaked her to the bone. Water dripped from her sleeves on the porch floor, tiny, rhythmic reminders of how far she had fallen. For a moment, I saw her not as the woman who had betrayed me, but as the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, whispering that the thunder sounded like God shouting. But mercy isn't the same as forgetting. It's the act of remembering differently. I took a breath. You can stay for one night, I said. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. Really? One night, I repeated. There's a blanket in the guest room. You'll sleep there. You'll leave in the morning. She nodded quickly, relief flooding her face. Thank you, Mom. I swear I'll figure everything out. I just need time. I stepped aside, and she crossed the threshold. Slowly, as if the house might reject her. The warmth of the room wrapped around her like a quiet reproach. She stood in the hallway, eyes moving from one familiar object to another. The coat hack, the photographs, the table by the stairs. Her hand brushed against the wall, and I wondered if she felt what I did, the memory of betrayal pulsing beneath the paint. I never realized how much I loved this place, she said softly. People rarely realize what they love until it stops forgiving them, I said. She turned toward me, tears trembling again. You have every right to hate me. I don't hate you, Laura, but I don't trust you either. There's a difference. She nodded, her chin quivering. I'll earn it back. Don't make promises to heal wounds you can't see. Just rest. I led her to the guest room, the same one she'd cleared out for the so-called buyers. I had repainted it since the ruling. The pale green walls glowed softly under the lamplight.
There's water and a towel in the bathroom, I said. She looked at me from the doorway, voice trembling. Do you want me to pay you back? Somehow? I'll find work. Anything. I met her gaze. You can't pay back peace, Laura. You can only respect it. She nodded, then stepped inside. The door closed softly. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, listening to the sound of her quiet sobs through the wall. It was strange how grief, even when deserved, still sounded the same. Downstairs, the house felt heavier, as if the walls remembered her too. I made tea I didn't drink, watched the rain smear the window glass, and tried to feel something other than the ache between anger and mercy. When I finally went upstairs, I paused outside her door. She was asleep, or pretending to be, curled up beneath the blanket, her hair spread across the pillow like a shadow she couldn't escape. I whispered, though she couldn't hear me. I hope you learned something from this, Laura. Not about money or law, about love, and how far it will bend before it breaks. The next morning, the rain was gone. The sky was pale, almost forgiving. I found her sitting at the kitchen table, holding a mug of tea with both hands. She looked smaller somehow, like the air itself had folded around her. I don't know where to go, she said quietly. Kevin's being held. Our accounts are frozen. I tried calling a few friends, but no one answers. People answer to what they respect, I said. Her eyes filled again. You must think I'm horrible. I shook my head. No, I think you're human. Humans are capable of cruelty when they mistake fear for necessity. She swallowed hard. Can I stay a few more days, just until I figure things out? I met her gaze, steady and unwavering. No, Laura. One night. That's what I promised. She looked down at her hands. So you're turning me away, just like I did to you. The question was meant to wound, but it didn't. It only hung there, heavy and honest. I'm not turning you away, I said softly. I'm letting consequence do its work. Mercy without consequence is permission, and I've already raised you once. I won't raise you twice. Her lips trembled, and she nodded, silent tears spilling over. I understand. She stood, walked to the doorway, then turned back. Thank you for the night, Mom. I nodded. Take the umbrella by the door. It's old, but it still works. She hesitated. Will you ever forgive me? I already have. Forgiveness isn't a gift for the guilty, Laura. It's freedom for the wounded. Her shoulders shook. She took the umbrella and stepped out onto the porch. The morning light caught the raindrops still clinging to the wood, each one sparkling like a reminder of what had passed and what remained. I watched her walk down the path, slow, uncertain, her figure growing smaller, until she turned the corner and disappeared. For a long time I stayed at the doorway, staring at the space she'd occupied. The porch creaked softly under my weight, the same sound it made the night she threw me out. Only now it didn't sound like exile. It sounded like closure. I whispered to the empty rain-washed air, You can't come back until you find yourself, Laura. And when you do, the door will still remember you. I closed it gently, locking it not out of fear, but peace. The house, my house, was silent again, whole again, and outside, the last drops of rain slid from the porch roof like tears the sky had finally learned to let go. The morning light slipped through the curtains, like forgiveness that hadn't yet made up its mind. It was pale and soft, the kind of light that touches everything without asking permission. Laura awoke to it with a start, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling, the faint smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen below. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then she saw the folded blanket on the chair, the clothes she'd hung over the radiator to dry. The guest room, my house, her childhood home. She sat up quickly, heart pounding. Maybe she'd overslept. Maybe I'd already left for work or errands. Maybe she could still talk me into letting her stay another night. She swung her legs off the bed and froze. Her suitcase wasn't there. Neither was her handbag. Panic flickered across her face. She hurried to the hallway, calling softly, Mom? No answer. Downstairs, the light poured across the kitchen table, catching on a folded envelope. Her bags were by the door, neatly packed, shoes wiped clean, the umbrella she'd borrowed leaning against the wall. On top of the suitcase sat her old house key, the one she'd used to enter my life and sign me away. Its edges glinted dully, and next to it, a note written in my hand. Laura, forgiveness doesn't always mean reopening doors. Sometimes it means learning to close them gently. I hope you find a place that teaches you what this house once tried to. Love isn't something you own, it's something you honor. You have one life to rebuild. Use it honestly. Mom. She stood there, reading the words again and again, tears falling onto the ink until they blurred the last line. She tried the key anyway. The lock turned halfway, then stopped. The mechanism had been changed. Outside, the air was bright but cold. The street gleamed from last night's rain, the same road that had once carried her away in a new car she couldn't really afford, towards a life built on borrowed things. Now, it carried silence. From the upstairs window, I watched her hesitate on the porch. That familiar silhouette, the shoulders I used to drape coats over, the hair I used to braid for school. She pressed her forehead to the door for a moment, then stepped back. She didn't knock. She only whispered something, a word I couldn't hear, before walking down the steps with slow, deliberate care, as if afraid to disturb the quiet
that was finally completely mine. When she was gone, I walked downstairs, folded the note she'd left behind, and placed it inside the kitchen drawer with the old mortgage papers and the new title, the proof of both our failures and my second beginning.
The house hummed softly around me. It no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a boundary that finally knew its shape. I poured myself a cup of coffee, opened the window, and let the cool breeze roll in. Outside, the world moved on. Buses groaned, birds argued in the maple tree, a neighbor's child chased the puddles. For the first time, the sound didn't hurt. It sounded like living. In the weeks that followed, the settlement from the restitution case cleared. The number in my account didn't thrill me, it only steadied me. Money had once been the tool of my undoing. Now it would be the means to something quieter. I met with a local charity that ran transitional housing for abandoned seniors, people like me, who had given everything to families that forgot the weight of their hands. I donated half of what I received, requesting that one of the new homes be built on the east side of town, where the bus still stops under the same elm tree Robert used to park beside. They asked me what to name it. I thought for a long time, then said, "The Brookside House." The name felt right, not after the street, but after the idea, a place that still carries water even after the flood. Evelyn visited once during the planning. She stood on my porch, clipboard in hand, hair wind-tossed and eyes proud. "You could have kept it all," she said. "Bought a new car, traveled, started over anywhere." I smiled. I did start over, just not anywhere else. She grinned. "You know, the judge quoted your case in another hearing last week, called it an example of dignity in defense." I laughed softly. Dignity is just grief wearing its best clothes. When she left, the afternoon sun spilled across the porch again, warm and familiar. I sat there for a long time, sketching ideas for the new shelter. Rows of small rooms, each with a window facing sunrise. At the edge of the page, without realizing it, I drew a door. It wasn't open or closed. It was simply there. That evening, I returned to painting, the same easel that had gathered dust during the chaos. I set it by the window, dipped my brush into a jar of muted blue, and began tracing the outline of my house. But this time, I didn't paint the porch or the rain. I painted light. It started at the door, a soft glow spilling outward, reaching into the yard, touching the world beyond the fence. The brush moved steady in my hand as if guided by something older than pain. And while I painted, I thought of Laura. I imagined her somewhere starting over, not comfortably, not easily, but honestly. Maybe she was sitting in a room half the size of the one she'd once owned, learning again how to make tea without guilt, how to earn a kindness instead of buying it. Maybe she was looking for work, learning humility, or volunteering at the shelter that would one day carry our family name. I hoped so, because redemption doesn't begin with forgiveness. It begins with recognition. When the painting was done, I stepped back. The image wasn't perfect, but it was true. A house filled with light, and a door that no longer needed to be opened for the world to feel what lived inside. I cleaned my brushes, placed them on the counter, and stood in the quiet that followed. It wasn't the silence of loneliness anymore. It was peace, earned, sturdy, final. As dusk gathered, I lit the porch lamp. The glow spilled across the same boards where I had once stood trembling, where Laura had cried, where the past had asked to be rewritten. Now it simply was, a story told to completion. I leaned against the doorway, looking out at the soft twilight, and whispered to the air that still carried her name, "I hope you found shelter tonight, my daughter, not just from the rain, but from yourself. The breeze lifted, gentle and cool as if answering. I smiled, turned off the light, and went inside. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean reopening doors. Sometimes the lesson is sheltering yourself. Share this if you believe justice can be gentle and powerful.